The most decisive thing is, as you mentioned earlier, that if the U.S. treats Bitcoin, rather than gold, as a gold-like asset, the U.S. securing its reserve assets. I estimate the inference is around 25%, and because they don't have that much right now, isn't that why they can't open it? So if gold continues to move as gold prices do, the U.S. gets nervous, compared to China, India, Russia, and the group called BRICS. But if the U.S. goes, hey, why be so outdated? Back in the day, metal's right. Gold is something used in semiconductors on audio equipment, that kind of metal, rare metal. And if I say it like that, and then say, real gold is Bitcoin, would that not work? Then the U.S. would have to hold a lot of Bitcoin. Now the U.S. is a nation. There are two ways for a nation to hold an asset. One is when the government holds it. And that government, in a narrow sense, there's direct ownership. And then there's when the government doesn't actually own it, but can exercise control at critical moments or block the inflow, which is something certain entities within a country possess. Especially private companies. This second method is exactly what a Bitcoin ETF is. And because of ETFs, already hundreds of thousands of spot Bitcoins have rushed into the US. Now, as for what an ETF is, if Goldman Sachs creates a Bitcoin ETF, then BlackRock already did. But if BlackRock does it, investors aren't buying the actual Bitcoin. They're buying a piece of paper representing it. The actual asset is that it's held by a custodian designated by BlackRock. Since the custodian designated by BlackRock is located in the US, at a critical moment, the US could freeze it or something. And so it's not that the US government holds it, but when it's institutionalized through things like ETFs, the amount of Bitcoin that US banks, corporations, private individuals, government pensions, or private pensions would hold that proportion. I see it as being around 23 million coins. And if they do that, once about 23 million coins are secure, it will have a very positive effect. First, in an emergency, the US could freeze Bitcoin to build a defensive shield. Secondly, due to the nature of Bitcoin, it moves from address to address. So, in a healthy, by healthy, I mean, there are 2 million addresses that the US monitors, and if there's Bitcoin, since Bitcoin connects to other Bitcoin, eventually, the rest of the Bitcoin here, with a few black box inferences added. That's how places like Palantir do their inference. The tendencies, the timing, the movements. If you do things like timing, you can get a general idea. So, if you look closely at 2 million of them, you'll be able to roughly figure out the other 18 million as well. What you can't see at all is stuff that, from the time of mining, has stayed completely outside the regulated system and only circulated underground. But if it has entered the regulated system even once, it'll eventually be linked to this through a series of connections. So, if you have this much secure, then money laundering, which was today's topic, helps prevent it. The most decisive part is, as you mentioned earlier, when the U.S. treats Bitcoin, not gold, as a gold-like asset, the U.S. is securing a reserve asset.